Was good, y'all? Track Kennedy with StudioSounds.com back with a brand new tutorial. I want to just apologize quickly for not posting the past week. I'm actually in the process of upgrading my setup, and I also managed to catch bronchitis all in the same week, so things got a bit crazy, but I'm back to it. The beat that I'm going to be breaking down for you guys today is a beat I made about a week ago that has a future type feel to me. It has some ambient type sections followed by more typical trap sections, which I think will fit his style well. The only three things I use for this entire beat are the Mutants Bank for Serum, the Legends Never Die drum kit, and the Fresh Squeezed MIDI pack for a couple of the hi-hat patterns. All of those are linked in the description for anyone who's interested in adding those to their sound library. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, it really helps us a ton. Without further talking though, let's go ahead and jump to this beat. So if you take a look at this track, everything pretty much revolves around this little loop on pattern 1, so let's go ahead and break down what's in that loop real quick. The very first thing I have is this little pluck in Serum called Distant from the Mutants Bank right there, and here's what it sounds like. So the sound itself wasn't like overly clean, it had a little bit of grime to it, and then with this pattern it just kind of sounds very dramatic, which I liked for that trap type feel. And then the next thing I added to this was this little groove pad, and this just added some suspense and movement to the first sound, so let's go ahead and take a listen to that real quick. So I thought that sounded pretty good, but I wanted to add kind of just like a airiness to the sound as well. So I added this little Krypton Ice pluck, and here's what it sounds like by itself. So the next thing I did was assign them all to the same mixer track, which was mixer track 1. And from there I added a gross beat, and the setting that I actually chose was, if you go to the preset section, you want to go to momentary, excuse me, and then you want to just use this slow triplet setting to get a sound like this. So I thought that just had a really cool type sound. So once I had that, what I did was just click quick render as audio clip to end up with pattern 1. And that's when I started building the track. So let's go ahead and jump in the next section. I'll show you guys what I added next. So once I had that piece exported, that was pattern 1. As you guys can see, it's right here. That's the little sample section. So the next thing I started adding to it were these drums. So here's pattern 2 and what it sounds like when we add the 808. And actually, let's just do this one by one. But here's the 808 pattern real quick. So a pretty simple pattern, just a couple little 3rd and 6th note rolls right here at the end, but still nothing too crazy, pretty basic as you guys can see. The only difference is, if you guys take a look at this, the actual key of this is G minor, and the reason for that is when we put the little gross beat effect on the actual sample, it's going to change the pitch of it too. So to find your new key, what you want to do is you want to just come down to your initial root note of what the sample is or whatever you exported was, and you want to just go up 4 notes in your scale. So for this, it was just C minor, so we would just go up 4 notes from C in the scale, so it would be 1, 2, 3, 4. So now I know my new scale after we apply the gross beat to is going to be G minor, so that's why the 808 is in G minor, and everything else that I'll play later is going to be in G minor as well to match that. So the next thing I added to this track was just this little punchy kick for the top end, and here's what that sounds like. And and then the actual snare is all the way down here. I ended up using a different snare than what I had initially, so that's why it's all the way down here, and it's actually on pattern 15, but it's just a super simple pattern. Excuse me, nothing really difficult about this. So I just moved it up from the C to the F sharp and just added a Maximus and a Fruity Delay to it. On Maximus using the Warmness No Latency 1 or 2, either one of them work, just find which one sounds better to you. And I just add a simple little delay, I believe it was just a 2-step delay, yeah, with a ping pong setting. Turn the panning to the left or right, doesn't matter, just so it'll bounce from speaker to speaker, and then just adjust the volume to what you like it. I didn't really make it very loud, but it just added some movement to the track, and when you combine that with the rest of the drums, this is what you have. So that's kind of the main drums right there. The only other thing that I added to that real quick was this little open hi-hat, and I just layered that with the snare to make it a little bit more thicker and a little bit more interesting. Here's what that sounds like. So as you guys can see, really nothing too difficult there. Let's go ahead and jump to the next section. I'm going to go ahead and start breaking down these hi-hats for you guys, which are a little bit more complicated. So this right here is the actual hi-hat. I just shortened it up a little bit, but this is HH Fort 3 from the Legends Never Die kit. And this is the pattern for it. Let's go ahead and just play that by itself real quick. So this pattern, it definitely has a cool little groove and a cool little bounce to it. If you guys notice, this little second section is a little bit more busy than the first section. And the actual bounce and pattern for this hi-hat track came from our fresh squeezed MIDI pack and was actually programmed by the homie Canary Jules. And what he did in here is he actually included a bunch of different little hi-hat patterns in here so that you can just kind of drag and drop and, you know, find different ones that might fit your track. So what I like to do is I'll go ahead and import one of his, and I'll just go through here and modify it to my taste and my track. So that's what I did right here with this little hat pattern, just changed it up slightly, but that's where kind of the idea came from. And if we take a look at the track, what I did was I kind of separated into two parts. This is kind of the full pattern, but I wanted this little more open section to kind of come in and then have it be a little bit more busy on this little B section right here. So what I did was I just went ahead and I cut it up for the first part like this, and then for the second part I just did the exact opposite and just shortened it up from the top. And when you add the hi-hat to it, this is what you get. So that hi-hat really just brings a great groove to the track and really a nice bounce to it. So let's jump to the next section. I'll show you guys the next instrument that I brought into here. So before we just jump in this instrument, I don't think I talked about this, but this is actually really simple. This is just a little crash you guys heard me add just a second ago, as it's just Cymbal Fruits. It just has a slight little delay on it again to give it a little bit of bounce and movement. Same kind of settings, 2-step I believe. Yep, 2-step, ping pong, panning to the left or right, turn the volume down to your tastes, and that just comes in there every so often for kind of a little bit of a dramatic effect. So after a while I wanted to go ahead and start switching up the beat. So pattern 8 was another little instrument that I added to it, and the name of the preset is actually the Weird Plucks, and this is from the Mutants Bank again right there. And it basically plays the simplest pattern ever. Here's what it sounds like real quick. Basically just 2 notes. So as you guys can see, that's the little pattern right here, super simple. And then I just have a couple of different effects on here. I have a delay again, give it a little bit of movement. I have an EQ just for the mix to get rid of any low end I don't need in the sound. And then I have a pancake effect. This is actually a free plugin you guys can Google and find, but it's basically just an auto panner. But it has some really cool little presets and effects in here that you can kind of choose from. But I just like the idea of moving it from side to side. It will just make that kind of boring pattern a little bit more interesting if it's bouncing from speaker to speaker or headphone to headphone when somebody's listening to it. So that was kind of the thought behind that. But when you add it into the beat, this is what you end up with. And then if you guys take a look at it, I made this just a little 12 bar verse, just kind of the standard these days. It seems like not a lot of people are doing 16. So for the little last section before the actual hook, I went ahead and I dropped these hi-hats out. I'm not actually even sure why I changed, or actually I took this down to pattern 6 because I changed up the little hi-hat pattern, I believe, on pattern 6. So this is a little hi-hat in here, if you guys take a look at it. So when I take the fullness that those kind of snares provide, and just because they take up so much space and they have kind of a little bit of a busy pattern in here, I want to kind of draw the listener's attention to something else and make it not feel too empty. So instead of adding kind of a second instrument or something else to there, I decided I would just kind of switch up these hi-hats or these open hats into something a little bit more interesting. So this is a second open hi-hat pattern from the Fresh Squeezed pack that I was telling you guys about. And I'm not even sure if I changed this any. It just has a lot of cool little patterns in it. And if you don't know how to shorten your sounds up to make them stop as soon as they're released, you just want to go into the instrument settings and you want to turn everything to the left except the hold. You want to take that to the right, and that'll allow a sound to cut off as soon as it's released. So when we play that with the actual track, this is what we end up with. So from here, it's going to drop into the hook section. Let's jump into the next section. We'll talk about that. So for this little hook section, I wanted to kind of take a little bit of the brightness from the sample. So I automated a simple little EQ in here, basically, that takes a lot of the bottom end out and a lot of the top end out, just to kind of give it a little bit more of an ambient type feel. And then just right click, create automation clip to end up with this little automation clip on your playlist, and then you can just select your patterns where you want it to go up or where you want it to go down. So basically when it comes to the hook, it goes from this little bright sample into a much more muted type sound. So let me go ahead and just play a little transition. So basically it kind of goes from being the center of attention to kind of playing more of the background right there, which helps with that ambient type sound. So the next thing I added to it was pattern 7, which is this detuned sub, and again from the Mutants Bank, and here's what this sounds like. So it's basically just holding one long note and just goes up to the A for a little bit of variety there at the end. And then the next little thing I added was pattern 9, which is this little textural pad, excuse me, not textured. And here's what it sounds like by itself. And that's where you get that ambient, grainy type melody that you hear from the hook, is from that little pad right there. So when you layer those three elements basically together, this is what you end up with right here. So I thought that sounded really good, but I wanted to make it even kind of more soft for the hook and add something that was even more melodic. So I added this little strum chord in here, and here's what it sounds like by itself. And this is the same note over here, but let me just play it one more time. So you get that nice guitar strum, plus you get that little strummed percussive element that goes with it, which I thought just sounded really cool. And when you combine that with the others that you have, so I added that little hit right there on the one just to make it a little bit more dramatic. And then right here at the end, as you guys start to hear, that sample starts to kind of fade out and it goes into the B section of the hook, which is a little bit more busy, but we just bring in this melody again with the hi-hats and everything else. So here's what it sounds like with the B section. And then just as a simple transition, I have just a reversed hat over here. So the same hi-hat that I had earlier, I just went ahead, right clicked and cloned it, set it to 1 bar, generic, so it doesn't change the pitch of it, normalized it and reversed it. And if you get any space on your sample or whatever sample you're using, you can always trim it to get rid of any little spaces. But by itself, this is what it sounds like. It's just a nice little easy transition piece. And I usually use it right before the full kind of crash, just to kind of build extra suspense with it. So here's what it sounds like going from the A section to the B. And then from here, we're going to go into the second verse. The second verse really does not have anything new to it. We've included everything. The only kind of difference is that just for this little first section, I dropped out the snares. And then for this second section, instead of having this little pluck come in right there, it comes in a little bit later over here when the hi-hats drop out, but it's the exact same pattern again, and it just goes back to the hook from there. So really simple. So that's pretty much going to go ahead and cover it for this tutorial. If you guys take a look at it, we've covered all the instruments that are in here, as well as the automation effect. So really simple. I hope you guys learned something new. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe button. I'm going to go ahead and play the beat one more time for you guys from the top. Thank you for watching StudioSounds.com.